Hi there, North Point Church. It is great to be back with you virtually. A special welcome to you. Welcome to those who may be joining from other congregations who decided to jump in on this feed. And a very special welcome to anyone who may be coming without a faith background, no online or in-person church that you may be a part of, and you're just trying to come and check out the claims of Jesus a little bit. You're very, very much a part of what we're doing here. And I hope you see the heart of Jesus and how he embraces us as we see the story of Peter today. My name's Clint. I serve with the denomination that North Point Church is a part of, the Christian Missionary Alliance, and I work in the Western District office. And want to bring a special welcome to you from our denominational family, about 140 congregations in Alberta and up into Northwest Territories. And together we do great things, and you're a big part of that. And we continue to focus on seeing people experience spiritual renewal in their lives, and to see people become more and more embracing the character and the identity of Jesus in their life, and to share the love of Christ with those, especially those who haven't had the opportunity to hear that message. So that's what we're all part of together. I know that you've been journeying through the Gospel of John, and we get to wrap up that series today in John chapter 21. And it's a passage that I really value, and I'm excited to share some of my own thoughts on that with you. And I'm doing it as we settle into this new normal. It's been about a month since we've started church online, kind of all across the world. And as we settle into this different realities, sometimes we just desperately long to go back to where things were before all of this trauma that we're still in the middle of began to take place. As I reflect on our passage today in John chapter 1, which takes place after the story of Easter, which was a week ago, I wonder if that's how the Apostle Peter felt. The world had gone through a traumatic change, the death, the burial, and thank God, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But for Peter, this change held special meaning, and not in a good way. If you're familiar with the story of Peter, you'll know that something really traumatic happened to him over these events. About 10 days ago, in the story that we're following, when Jesus is in the upper room celebrating the Passover meal with his closest followers, Jesus taught them, he washed their feet, modeled servanthood, but he made this ominous statement that he would be betrayed and he'd be crucified and he'd be abandoned by his closest followers. Peter was quick to jump in, and this is in John chapter 13. And Peter said, even if everyone else leaves you, I will lay down my life for you. Well, it was to this pledge of absolute loyalty, no matter what, that Christ responded with these words that tormented Peter. Peter, will you really lay down your life for me? I tell you the truth. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Well, if you're familiar with the story, you'll know what happened. They left the upper room and they went out and they prayed, and eventually Jesus is there with 11 of his disciples, but this 12th disciple, Judas, the one who did betray, he came with this motley crew of soldiers and people, and in the middle of the night, the coup happened. And they arrested Jesus, and with that kiss, Jesus was betrayed by Judas. And Peter's initial response was actually fantastic. He jumped out and he pulled his sword. Maybe that's not fantastic, but he responded with bravery towards his pledge of loyalty. And he took a swing at one of the people and actually cut off the ear of the high priest's servant. Jesus said, Peter, put your sword away. And Jesus went and he healed the ear of the man that had been injured because of Peter. Well, I wonder if then the adrenaline wore down and the reality of what Peter had just done began to sink in. And Peter, like everybody else, bailed. They fled and let Jesus go into his mock trial all on his own. Eventually, Peter followed at a distance and he made his way into the courtyard. Let's pick up what happened there. Follow from Matthew 26, verse 69. Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You also were with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But Peter denied it. I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it on again. He denied it again on an oath and said, "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them, for your accent gives you away." Then Peter began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man. With God as my witness, I do not know Jesus." And immediately the rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken. "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And Peter went out and he wept bitterly. Peter loved Jesus, and Jesus loved Peter. They lived and walked together for 3 years. That was broken. Peter pledged loyalty to death. And he didn't even stand up to, in that culture, one of the most inconsequential people, a young servant girl. Guilt, regret, remorse. I wonder if it went beyond that, though. Matthew 16, verse 18, Jesus made this most amazing statement to Peter. And he said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and even the gates of Hades will not prevail against it." And Peter knew that he had a calling from God. In the upper room, Jesus had even said to Peter, "You need to strengthen your brothers," because Jesus knew they would all abandon him. I think Peter thought, I can't do this again. I've denied Jesus, and now I'm denied from this relationship I had with Jesus. I'm denied from leading the church that Jesus talked to him about. Jesus spoke of this new kingdom, this amazing kingdom, an upside down way of working, God's way of working, first and last, and all of those things. Peter didn't fully get it, but he was fully in on it, and he wanted to be. That too was gone. So what did he do? All of this change took place. Peter decided to go back to all that he knew, the old normal, because he couldn't handle the new normal. And he went back to fishing. Pick this up in John chapter 21, verse 1. Later, Jesus appeared again to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there: Simon, Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, sons of Zebedee, 2 other disciples. Peter said, "I'm going fishing." That was his vocation before. "We'll come too," the other disciples said. So they went out in a boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" "No," they replied. Then Jesus said, "Throw your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some." So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, jumped into the water, and headed to the shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to shore, for they were only about 100 yards from the shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. "Bring some of the fish you've just caught," Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. "Now come and have some breakfast," Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it's the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the 3rd time Jesus had appeared to the disciples since he had been raised from the dead. My guess is that Peter assumed because he denied Jesus that he would be denied any opportunity to serve Jesus again. It was the prevailing ethos of the religious establishment. Imperfect people don't apply. Women don't apply. Those who aren't like us don't apply. You can, but you will be denied. Peter believed because of his denial of Jesus that he would be denied relationship that he had previously with Jesus, an intimate relationship, and he'd be denied the opportunity to serve Jesus. Tragically, that same perspective is replicated for us today. Maybe like Peter, you just out and out denied Jesus. Now, I've seen it happen. People that I know from church, and then I had the opportunity to work with them where they were like, well, I don't really believe that stuff, or my wife's into it, or I go because it's good for the kids. Well, you just denied Jesus. Or maybe even like Peter, if you swear a blue streak, then people say, well, clearly they're not a follower of Jesus. And so we can swear enough to make people think we actually don't believe any of these things. But sometimes our denial can take different forms. Maybe we've committed a sin so egregious that in essence we view it as a denial, and no longer can we have a relationship with Jesus, and no longer can we serve Jesus. You can come up with a list. Maybe it includes unfaithfulness or another form of abandonment of a child or a parent or a spouse. Maybe it involves something that had you incarcerated, or is there thefts or lies, or the list can go on and on. And we look at some of the things that we've done wrong in our lives and we say, I can't be used by Jesus. I don't even know that Jesus wants me. And it's not always the things that we've done. Sometimes it could be things that have happened to me or happened to you. And we can look at our lives and you're like, wow, you don't appear to be perfect anymore. And tragically, the religious establishment today, which I'm a part of, can be like it was then. And we say, well, it doesn't quite look like you show this perfect life. And if we accept you, then people are going to think that some of the stuff in your past is actually okay. For those of you that have known a little bit of my journey, you'll know that I've had some of that experience in my own life. My previous role at the Foothills Alliance Church, I was able to share about a year and a half ago my own story with being denied forms of ministry because of some of the things in my past. So I have a passion for it. I know what it's like. I know what it's like when your life doesn't appear to be perfect and the church says you're denied. Sometimes it's so prevalent that we almost wonder, is this the way of Jesus? And some of you who may be joining us who aren't a part of a faith community, maybe you're saying, I used to be a part of the faith community, but like Peter, my life wasn't perfect, or I made a mistake, or something happened to me, or I'm simply not a white male. I've been denied serving. Is that the way of Jesus? Let's see how Jesus responded to Peter. John 21, verse 15. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon, Peter, Simon, son of John, Peter, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, second time. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time, he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. And he said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. So are we denied because of the things that we've done that are wrong, because of our denials? Are we denied because things have happened to us, because our lives don't appear to be perfect? Well, followers of Jesus might deny you. wrongly. Jesus never denies us. Let's break down this conversation between Jesus and Peter a little bit. Jesus said, "Do you love me more than these?" Probably referring to the other disciples that were around, because Jesus had heard Peter make this bold proclamation in the upper room several days earlier, 10 days earlier, that even if everybody else leaves you, I won't. So probably that. There's some other interesting things. 3 times Jesus says, "Do you love me?" And most think, and it does make good sense, and it would be consistent with the way of Jesus, that 3 times Peter had the opportunity to make up for every one of his denials. But there's something else in here a little bit more subtle within the text. In our English language, we use the word love. In the original language that Scripture was written in, there was actually 3 different uses or words that could be used for the word love. The first 2 here are the love being mentioned when Jesus says, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" The first 2 questions. It was more about, do you have this full commitment of making my love for you? It's actually the same as John 3:16, "For God so loved the world." Do you love me? Are you fully committed to me? It's mostly a cognitive choice that we make. Of course, as we know, just read, Peter said yes to both of those. But there's a second one here, and it's more of this brotherly, intimate love. And so Jesus asking him the questions were, one, I'm going to restore that we are committed and we're together. But this third one, "Do you love me?" was that, yeah, we have this intimate relationship again, and it's restored. So no matter what we said or what we've done, Jesus said, we still have intimacy. We still have relationship. But Jesus said something slightly different language, but 3 times he said, then do what I called you to do. Then feed my sheep. And not only was the relationship between Jesus restored, but the ministry that God had called Peter to fulfill, it was also restored. You flip over just a few pages in your Bible, and you're going to get to Acts chapter 2. And who is it that preaches this most amazing sermon where 3,000 people respond to follow Jesus? It's Peter, the one who we probably would have denied. I work in a denomination office in churches, and we have to vet personnel. I might say, well, let's give them a little bit of time and see if we should let this person serve again or not. But that's not the way of Jesus. Jesus used Peter to preach the most influential sermon that's ever been done. Jesus used Peter as the rock upon which the church was founded. Jesus used Peter in the most extraordinary ways in establishing his church. He wasn't denied. He was approved. There's this most annoying commercial on the radio. And you might say, well, you remember it because it's annoying. I actually couldn't remember what the company was, so I had to Google it, and I found it. And it's, if you own your home, it's a credit company, you are approved. And so what if approved? Approved. No, like no matter what you say, if you own your home, you're approved. And I thought of that with Jesus. And we can come and we say, but don't you know that? And if we love Jesus, Jesus says, approved. Yeah, but approved. Approved. But approved. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, the response of Jesus to us is that we are approved. When we love Jesus, we are approved. I love North Point Church. One of the things I love about North Point is that when I open up your website, what jumps out at you? 2 words: imperfect people. North Point, you're imperfect. But Jesus says to you, and Jesus says to me, in my imperfections and others, we're approved. I know some of you are joining us online who have not had that experience from the church, and I'm sorry. But if you love Jesus, friends, you are approved. Let me pray with you. Lord, thanks for my friends at North Point. Thanks for those who are joining from different places. And thanks, God, for those who are joining us who may not even be a part of any faith community, in some because they've been said that they're denied. And Lord, I thank you that when we love you, no matter what we've done, no matter what's been done to us, you tell us we are approved. Amen. Thank you, friends. Look forward to seeing you soon.